Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Anna Kalczyńska. No ceasefire, no deadline, and no sanctions plan. While talks in Alaska failed to secure a ceasefire in Ukraine, the tone and the absence of the so-called severe consequences for the lack of truce reduced the possibility of stricter sanctions for Russia and its partners. That must have obviously had an impact on the markets. So joining me to assess the implications of the Anchorage summit is Wojciech Jakóbik, energy security analyst, Energy Security Center. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us here on TVP World.
Good afternoon, my pleasure.
So despite of the lack of tangible results, following the meeting, President Trump said he would hold off any tariffs, any potential tariffs against China for its purchases of Russian oil, citing progress made over the weekend with Putin. So what's been the reaction to that of the global stock markets?
So when you look at the oil price, it is decreasing because of predicted stability coming from lack of confrontation. And that's it. Investors are looking for earnings, and it's good for business that no one is shooting at each other during the Alaska summit. There is no new sanctions, but in fact, further escalation in Europe coming from further invasion from Russia into Ukraine, further Russian hostile actions in Europe could hit the markets like the energy crunch in 2021, 2022 did. So it is a short-sighted approach. Of course, it is always like this when it comes to the stock exchange, but no revolution, no resolution, no surprise coming from Alaska is providing markets with greater certainty. So the raw material prices are decreasing and we have this illusion of stability.
All right, but let's discuss the potential sanctions on Russia and its allies. We first heard from President Trump of severe consequences if the ceasefire wasn't reached. Then he spoke of hearing exercise. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Friday, and let me quote him, "It's put up or shut up time. Trump will make it clear to President Putin that all options are on the table." Yet no sanctions are in view. So how do you read the effects of this meeting in this respect?
Okay, so I would also remind the condition on which Trump agreed to speak with Putin in Alaska. Trump stated that he demands a full ceasefire immediately as a start of a negotiation. It was agreed with European allies, with Ukraine. Everyone was on his side with this issue that Russia needs to stop fighting Ukraine immediately for the talks to go on further. And there is no ceasefire, there is no talk about ceasefire. Donald Trump speaks about the final peace agreement, which is somewhere in the future, but we don't hear anything about the ceasefire. So we would imagine some reaction from the White House, from the Scott Bessent, which is really strict when it comes to his sanctions rhetorics. White House has full potential to hit Russia where it hurts with new sanctions like tariffs on oil supplies from Russia to third countries, looking mainly at China right now. So there is no decision yet. Maybe there are some mysterious agreements that we don't know about yet. We'll see about the talks in White House today with President Zelensky, but there is no reaction from White House. We expected more. We expected concrete solutions, concrete pressure on Kremlin to make Kremlin talk about a real solution to the conflict. And the sine qua non part of this solution is ceasefire, and we don't hear anything about it.
All right. So speaking of these secret businesses, the meeting in Anchorage was staffed by high-ranked officials from both sides. So let's just run the attendance list. Russia's special economic envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, who played a key role in negotiations since February meeting in Riyadh. He was the one spotted in Moscow together with Steve Witkoff. So there was also the finance minister Antov Siluanov, who criticized the seizing and transferring the Russian assets to Kiev, and also threatening the use of frozen Western assets to develop Russia for his part. On U.S. side, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Do we know of any possible deal that could have been done from this business perspective?
Mm-hmm. All we hear are the leaks to the press, so mainly speculations about the possible business perspectives in Western Siberia or maybe somewhere in Alaska. Some of those leaks are pointing out to the possibility of coming back of American companies to Russia to support hydrocarbons development there. There were also some rumors about Alaskan projects which could be supported by Russian LNG technologies, but it is nothing serious. Those are not big deals that would make American citizens earn some wonderful money. In fact, LNG is well developed in US. It is Russia which needs American technology to sustain its hydrocarbon development, especially in unconditional reservoirs. So there is nothing concrete on the table. To sum up, we don't have a stick against Russia, but we also don't see any concrete carrot, only some PR statements.
Well, one of the carrots could be, I think, the sanctions, alleviation sanctions on the Russian aviation companies. For a moment, it was briefly mentioned.
For example, or maybe some deal on coming back to Russian hydrocarbons, but you need to have more people on board to make this happen. We need to remember that America is not importing any oil or gas from Russia. All of those hydrocarbons were coming to Europe, and it's up to Europe if it's willing to stay with its plan to quit reliance on Russian fuels totally, or is it going back to Russian hydrocarbons? But it is not Donald Trump to decide about it.
All right. In the meantime, Senator Lindsey Graham, the main architect behind the sanctions on Russia, still calls for implementing these sanctions. So we're going to see what today's meeting will bring. So the next focus for the market will be obviously the talks today between Donald Trump and President Zelensky, along with European leaders. If the scenario of ceding Donbas to Russia materializes, what implications it will have for Ukraine and for Russia?
So the security experts pointing out that the part of Donbas that would be moved under Russian control is heavily fortified, and it is ready to be defended for many, many months ahead. So that is the exact part of the front line that is the hardest part to get by the Russian troops. So it would mean a great preparation for further invasion, and we in Central and Eastern Europe would read this agreement as only a preludium to further aggression.
All right, so speaking strategically, and how about economically? Donbas is basically rural area, important for grain production, among others, and trade. So how importantly would it weaken Ukraine?
Well, Donbas is also full of coal, and it is full of raw materials that could be the part of the resource deal between US and Ukraine. So in future, in times of peace, Donbas would be one of the main business activity centers in Ukraine. So losing this part of economy would mean losing a great advantage when it comes to economic competitiveness for further free and Ukrainian sovereign state.
All right, and finally, as our time is running to end, an issue which has always been extremely difficult to tackle and to assess, Russian economy. How resilient is it despite the imposed sanctions?
So Russian economy is on a war pace, so it is adjusted to the war situation, and it is addicted to this situation. So it is to be sustained in spite of new sanctions. But if we got new sanctions in place, if we got common Western policy against Russia, increasing pressure in place, those together, connected, for example, with drone attacks on Russian refineries, could make an impact on Russian ruling circles to make a decision to stop the war, to retreat somehow, like the war in Afghanistan made the Soviet ruling elite decide to withdraw, and that was the beginning of dissolution of Soviet Union. So that is a scenario somewhere in the future, not tomorrow, but if we look at data coming from Russia, we already see a decreasing revenues coming from oil and gas, decreasing budget revenues, and increasing issues with budget deficit. So sometime in future, Putin will have to cease some part of social spending, and that is a risky scenario for him and for the ruling elite in Kremlin. So sanctions connected with greater support of Ukraine could make Kremlin speak about a real peace, and that is why we needed to stop the war for real, not only in PR campaigns from the White House.
All right, so decreasing figures, slowing down on the Russian economy. But the big question is, has the time come? I mean, is the current economic situation making Moscow prone to negotiate, or to the opposite, the Kremlin needs the war to go on?
Well, Kremlin is speaking about some kinds of ceasefire, some kinds of finishing the conflict, so it needs a break to regain power. So that is why Vladimir Putin is looking for some trade around Ukraine, because if he was having a good position, he wouldn't speak about it. He would just continue an invasion, and it is lasting for a fourth year without a resolution. The goals of so-called special operation are not met. So that is why Vladimir Putin is looking for some trade. And the bad thing for whole Western world is that there are some people in the Western world that are willing to talk about such trade, which is against an interest of every sovereign state in Central and Eastern Europe. All of our countries remember how the big powers were settling the stage in Central and Eastern Europe. We don't want to get back to this scenario.
Absolutely. Wojciech Jakóbik, energy security analyst. Thank you so much for joining us here on TVP World.
Thank you too.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned to TVP World for more to come.